ready.
Thanks for listening to Buff in the Rough. Last time we were together, I introduced you to Jeff Stacy and learned a little bit about the history of the Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Kennels. We talked about some of his earlier influencers, how he got into rabbit hunting, some of those first hounds that he had, and then towards the end of our conversation, he mentioned then the big story happened. And I was like, well, what's the big story? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to find out. What was the big story? So let's pick up where we left off last time.
Then the big story came right after that.
What's the big story?
Well, Dad buys he gets another hound from back to the preacher that I got the pups from. The preacher's brother has a hound, a young hound named Shorty, that him and Dad go hunting. And that beautiful tricolor dog. And he tells Dad, I'm up in age, I'm not doing too well. Take him and hunt him and let me know if this young dog's going to make anything. Because I know you and your son is putting a lot of hunting dogs and putting a lot of time in them. I just need to know if he's going to be worth anything. Dad says, okay. So Dad brings him to North Carolina the next week. And I start hunting this hound. And I called Dad about middle of the week, and I'm like, God. I said, this dog can fly. And he can stay dead on the track. And he will not open until he's right on the rabbit. If anything, he's a little too tight.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad said, okay, let's meet at a trial this weekend. So we go back to Wistful, Virginia. They had a trial. We meet. And I'm like, Dad, I got to register this dog. I mean, it ain't ours. I mean, what does the man want it called? He said, I ain't worried about the money. We can throw the papers away, whatever. Just register him under our kennel, Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Shorty. I said, okay. So I register him. I go out, win first place.
Wow.
So I hunt the dog about another 2 weeks. And Dad comes back to North Carolina. And he says, what do you think? I said, I love him more every day. I said, he listens, he minds, he's so proud. He held himself proud.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in 96, 97, right after we started our club. And I said, Dad, he said, you're getting attached to this hound. And I said, yep. He said, well, Al, when I go home Sunday, he said, I'm taking him with me. And I'm like, man, what are you doing that for? He said, well, he's not ours. He said, I'm going to take him back to his owner. And I'm going to ask him to sell him and price him to me, and I'm going to tell him that we think he's an exceptional hound,
mm-hmm.
and that we really want to keep him. We really want him. What's the price? I said, well, that's fair enough. And he said, if he says I don't want to sell it, he says, I'm going to call you and tell you to tear them papers up and throw them in the trash. Because, it was an experience,
Mm-hmm.
He said, but if he sells him, you already got him registered. And I said, but Dad, this dog's AKC, is what you told me from the beginning. He said, yeah, he is. And he said, I'll get his AKC papers if he sells him. So anyway, Dad leaves North Carolina on Sunday, gets home, calls me like he always did, when he got home on Sunday evening. And he said, I need to talk to you. I'm like, my heart's done dropped because the man ain't going to let us have the dog and blah, 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 And I said, well, did you take Shorty back? And he said, yeah. He said, that was my first trip. I took him before me and your mom even come home, which was only 2 or 3 miles from where I was raised. He said, I knocked on the door. He said his oldest son, which I know them all, we grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
He come to the door and he said, I asked him, was his daddy here? And that I brought his dog to him. And he said, he looked at me and he said, Coy, Dad passed away last night.
Oh, no.
He said, but I got to tell you, and he told me and my mom and the family, this was on a Saturday, before he passed away Saturday night, that if he didn't live, that he wanted you to have this dog.
My goodness.
So Dad gets, Dad's not a real emotional person. He's pretty tough. He got a little choked up, and he turned and thanked him, of course, and all this, and went and got in the truck, and him and Mom went home. Well, me being a youngster, the first thing I've said is, well, did you get the AKC papers? and, and Dad's like, son, it's not important.
Right.
What's important is my friend left me this dog.
That's right.
And I'm not going to ask the family, right, today after he passed, can you find these papers for me?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm not probably never going to ask for these papers. He said, because we're going to build our kennel. We've got Brandy and Mickey already got us rolling. We're going to breed this dog into what we've already done, and we're going to build our own.
So,
and the rest is history. Shorty finished top 10 in the world 4 times, won 14 state championships. I didn't even know what the Buckeye Series, which now is All-Star Series and all this, and that was back then. And I was finishing in the top 3 and 4 every year, and I didn't even know what it was.
wow.
And I wasn't running every hunt. I was just running some big hunts in the South. Then we started going to the nationals in the world. First world hunt was in 1999, and I hunted Shorty. Won my cast, but didn't advance. Rules has changed since then. 2000, Dad got really sick, had a heart attack, got his neck broke in the coal mines, was in pretty rough shape. So I didn't go to many hunts. I would go to the hospital or wherever to see that. And he kept saying, why are you here? You need to be at a hunt. You got to get Shorty qualified for the world, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Dad, the hunt, kind of like the papers to him, the hunts wasn't important to me.
Right.
It was him. So 2000, I didn't get Shorty qualified. I didn't go to a qualifier. So I ended up going as a hired handler later at the world that year and hunting somebody else's dog. But anyhow, so 2001 rolls around, Dad's a lot better. And of course, we qualified Shorty right off the get-go. And that's the year we finished second in Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan. We finished second in the world.
Wow.
And we lost on a check.
Oh.
And we held first strike for 36 minutes. Dogs went in checked, and Lee Alexander, he's passed away also, but a good friend of ours, started that weekend hunting a dog named Sundown King, which went back to a lot of the old Brinko blood. And they made this little lose. We had a TV crew, Outdoor Life Network was filming. The dogs was hammering. King held second strike. Shorty held first. And Roy Swafford, great friend of mine, held third strike. It was a 3-dog final. And they're pounding this rabbit. Well, the TV crew goes running down a mud path to try to get a video of the rabbit. Like they had several of me to cast before. But anyway, the rabbit turns and goes back. So the dogs overrun it a little, make a lose. King barks, and by the time he's done letting out his big squall, Shorty barks behind him. Obviously, there's going to be no arguing as far as I was concerned because I heard it. King got the recovery. He was the first dog to open, even though it was 5 seconds. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
And that's the way I was taught to. I wouldn't judge him, but that's the way I was taught to believe, and there was no question on my part. Well, they run the rabbit 36 minutes after that.
Wow.
4 non-hunting judges. And at the end of the hunt, they walk out of the thickets, and all of them look and say, we never seen the rabbit. So that means the strike points got circled because we ran to the end of the hunt. And that means, as I explained earlier in the beginning, that I lost because all 3 of us went in check at 20 minus, and King got a 20 recovery, which left him at 0.
Oh, that just sounds like a tough break.
It was very tough, and I'm so upset. I mean, I am probably one of the most I've ever been upset. I'm kicking gravels. I'm upset. cussing, whatever. There was probably 60 spectators. And they was all up in Todd Morgan, which was running UKC Hunting Beagle program at the time. We was running at his dad's house, and he had all spectators in the yard. You know, they wasn't allowed to go with us. It was the TV crew, the handlers, the judges, and Mr. Todd Morgan. Anyway, everybody's congratulating Dad. Everybody knew Shorty had first strike, because if they didn't know, Dad had told them. Jeff's got first strike, you know. And so Todd Morgan reports back to the Master of Hounds, which was another friend of ours out of Saltville, Virginia, named Alan Moore. And they have the Master of Hounds out there on the files. He's keeping a scorecard too. He said, I don't know what's wrong with Jeff, but he is very upset. And, you know, everybody else is walking up the driveway, and I'm the last one to come up the driveway because I knew I lost. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the TV crew comes up to me, and I'm like, hey, I can't talk right now. Just go away. So I walk up, and Dad's like, what happened? And I said, I lost on a check. Shorty lost on a check. And he said, you got to do this interview with the TV people. And I said, Dad, I can't. I'm so emotional, choked up. I just lost the world.
Right.
And he's like, you got to man up and do it. So that's where the sunglasses come in. And because I felt like tears was going to start flowing. And you got to be a man. You can't show tears and be a man. So, hunt. So I put my sunglasses on and went and did the interview. And the only thing I could get out was, and I got a VHS video tape of it. And the only thing I said was, I'm very proud of Shorty, you know, to win all the way through the world and get here. We'll be back. And that was, I didn't even congratulate the winner. I did personally, but not in the interview. And, you know, but that was the toughest loss I've ever had in my life. And I've finished second since then, but it wasn't that bad. But anyway, Shorty goes on to end up finishing, like I said, top 10 3 times in the world and winning multiple hunts. And he wasn't only a hunting dog, he was a show dog. The 14 state championships, 7 of them was in the show, 7 of them was in the field.
Wow. Talk about balance.
Yes, and that's why he became the mark of our kennel, Stacy Mountain Outlaw Kennels. And in my dad's eyes, and we've had a lot of success, and we've been blessed, but no one ever lived up to Shorty in Dad's eyes. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm a little different. Mm-hmm. Shorty was great. Shorty did great. Produced us a lot of winners. We bred him to females out of the old Brandy female and the Mickey male. Mm-hmm. That was our first 2 champions. Shorty was our first grand. And then we bred him into them, and we had several grands. Mm-hmm. But he never produced himself, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And even in Dad's opinion, he'd say, well, they're good, but they're not as good as Shorty. That was the hound that set the mark. And to the day Dad passed away was 1 year ago next week. Nobody ever lived up to Shorty. And no matter how many championships I won with whatever dog or he won, they didn't do it like Shorty. Mm-hmm. and you know, and a lot of that was so true, but a lot of it that was his first real love, you know, both of us. And he was so balanced, as you said. Mm-hmm. And he was a dog that Dad never left the house without him in the truck. I mean, where he's gone hunting, field trialing, whatever, Shorty was with him. If he wouldn't, he was with me. And you know, we campaigned him till he was 10. I wanted to retire him at about 7 years old, and Dad was like, nope. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to run him no more. You run him, which Dad ran him a lot anyway. Mm-hmm. He ran him in his last field trial when he was 10 years old in Holmesville, Ohio, in a world hunt. He won his cast, and then he didn't have enough points to advance. And so when he come into the truck, we met at the truck. I was hunting a different dog, and he said, "Now you can retire."
Wow.
So from that day on, Shorty was just a rabbit hunter, and we bred. And actually, I've still got Shorty blood, grandsons and granddaughters out of him in the kennels now today.
Now that is a fantastic story.
I know it's a little long,
I
but
love it.
that's how it became, you know. And the room I'm sitting in right now, there's Shorty second in the world, there's Shorty fifth in the world, there's Shorty seventh in the world, and plaques hanging all over the room.
Wow.
But again, he was the benchmark, and it become from a preacher's brother that was a dear friend to my dad, you know, and that's where it all began. And so we had you know, you talked about we had a little success in the mid 90s or when we started, and we did, but we had, as young, really still young hunters, 99, 2000, 2001, here we are, big time in the world, you know. And I'll never forget Todd Morgan, a great friend of mine, and was a great boss. UKC, United Kennel Club, hired me in 1996 as a state rep, they called them back then.
Okay. And
today they're called a field rep. But I became a state rep and working for Todd Morgan and in 96 in United Kennel Club, and I'm still with them today. But anyhow, he says in the video I have, when I cut Shorty loose on the third round, I think, not the finals, but the third round, he calls, you know, Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Shorty and handler Corey Stacy, a boat manufacturer out of North Carolina, which made me proud that he called me my dad. But we were so unknown, and I worked for him, and he still didn't know my name.
That's funny.
And I mentioned Roy Swafford earlier in the interview thing. He was in the final cast, and Roy and I that weekend also become very good friends and still are today, and very good friends, more like brothers today. And we was friends then. But the first 5 years that he was a field rep in Michigan or state rep, and at the big hunts, him and I would get paired together as measuring committee or, you know, whatever, sitting on questions committee. Well, every time I'd walk up to a big hunt, he'd say, "Here comes old Shorty." So it made me so proud that they didn't know my name, but they damn sure knew Dad's and Shorty's name. You know what I mean? I still rib him about it today. I said, "It took you 5 years to figure out my name was Jeff, 4 letters. You called me Shorty for 5 years." But, you know, that means a lot to my whole family. And because Shorty put us on the map, and Shorty carried the name a lot stronger than us going out there with them guys winning big. It was about the dog, which Dad and I wanted to be about from day one. So then we get into it. Todd Morgan calls me and said they start the incentive fund in Beagles, which they was already doing in Cooney House. And he's like, "Jeff, why don't you nominate Shorty?" My name wasn't even on Shorty's papers. It was just Dad's.
Right.
And anyway, "Why don't y'all nominate Shorty for the incentive fund? You got pups out of him winning everywhere." And I said, "Todd, look, Dad told me when we started competition and we decided we was going to stay in it, it wasn't about the money. It was about the friendships, the family, competing, and the fairness. Because we both work hard. Dad's made big money all his life, and I was doing pretty well in my life. We are different people at work than we are in the field. We're out in the field to have fun, to teach, to encourage, to enjoy. We work to make a living.
I hear you.
We don't want to chase the almighty dollar, or we will start hating our hunts, or it will cause you to do things that wasn't in our plan. And to today, That was the rule Dad laid down in their kennels, and it stays there. And I still don't go compete for the big money hunts and this and that. You know, I compete in some, but if I make it all about the money, he said it will change you and it will change us, because then nobody will like us.
A wise man.
And I think he knew all this, and I really feel it in my heart. There was no two men more respected all over the United States and the Beagle world through the United Kennel Club than me and him. And I can't say we would have been that if we had chased a dollar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then Todd Morgan calls me again a few weeks later and says, well, I want you to know just what you're missing. If Shorty is the number one producing at the time stud dog that's not gaining a dollar. I'm like, hey, thank you, sir. That makes me feel good. Because we wasn't out breeding, selling pups, giving them to competition hunters or whatever. We bred to give to a few friends, and most of our pups that we didn't keep went to gun hunters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Shorty was bred and had 53 pups on the ground. And out of the 53 pups, there was 27 titled dogs.
Nice.
And 20 out of the 27 was dual titled. So at his stud rate, he was producing right at 50%.
Wow.
And probably the other 30 to 40% went to gun hunters that never field trialed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still very proud of that today. I look at that all the time. And I measure dogs I'm breeding today against it. So even though Dad and I, more Dad than me, said Shorty never produced another Shorty, but he sure produced a lot of winners when you look at a 50% rate.
Absolutely.
And I know hounds out there in the Hall of Fame Beagle world right now that's got 400 and 500 pups on the ground and 100 champions.
Wow.
So when you ask me which one I'd rather have a dog out of, I'm going to say, let's go find those Shorty, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and that's something we prided ourselves in.
Yeah, this is a fantastic story. I didn't really exactly know where we were going today. You know, I kind of had some things in mind about what we'd talk about. But I didn't know all of that about Shorty. I certainly knew what the dog was, and know I've heard you guys talk about him a lot. But boy, this is fantastic history, and I know you didn't have, and I know we're going to wrap up here because I can't possibly get everything I want out of you in one interview, so I'm gonna have
doing it as long as I've done it.
I've got to have you back many times to cover different things.
The last part about Shorty, back in mid 2000s, Dave McVeigh, which is working for Purina Dog Food right now, big guy there. Dave's won the world championship 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Dave would write a lot of stories about beagles in the American Beagler or better beagling back in them days, like you do in the coonhounds. Mm-hmm. Well, the story I just told you about where Shorty come from and how it all started, he wrote a story on my dad through my words.
Wow.
And everything I told you, I've got magazines that go back to mid 2000s with that story in it.
It's just a fantastic story. I mean, just how you got the dog in the first place. Yep. To it just really launched your kennel. My goodness, the reproducing, the balance that he had, not only in himself, but he reproduced that in his pups. All the winning. Just what a fantastic story. So I want to end on one last thing, and it's kind of you've won at the highest level. I mean, we just talked about Shorty, and when we have you back, we'll talk about some of the other hounds. You've been in the world finals cast. I don't know how many times, Jeff. Do you know? We've
got 6 top 4s.
Wow.
And we probably got around 10 top 10s.
Wow. That's pretty strong, my friend. So you know what it takes to win. You in these competitions, you understand what kind of hound it takes to win. And here's how I want to end it. If there's somebody out there that's interested in competition field trials, what are a few of the traits that are the most important? What do you look for in that hound that's
Oh, in
gonna
the hound.
in the hound
Number
that's gonna help them win?
number one's got to be hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Hard hunt. Number two, that Dad and I prided ourselves in, was honesty of
Mm-hmm.
the mouth. Don't mean that you won't take a minus. Every dog will from time to time. But you want a high percentage of when that dog opens, that rabbit is on its feet and moving. Because
Mm-hmm.
you're running against a time clock, not just, oh, we'll get it up in a minute,
Mm-hmm.
or pleasure hunting. That was our number one and number two was hunt and honesty and control was number three. We want them fast, and I'll say it to the day I'll probably pass away. I've never owned a dog that I feel like is too fast. I've owned dogs that I feel like that can't control their speed.
Mm-hmm.
So number three is control,
Mm-hmm.
and then I love showing, and I love that complete hound. And I just won the NHPA shows series with Popcorn,
Mm-hmm.
Stacy Mountain Outlaw
Mm-hmm.
Popcorn, which is a grandson of Shorty, which I feel like carries himself a lot. A lot of that blood flowed down. He's a very proud hound,
Mm-hmm.
very hard hunting hound, true mouth, great control. His mama was too, but long story short, that blood still flows. I'm losing it slowly but surely,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still there. Shorty was so proud, I could put him on a bench and set him and stand and walk away. I did it at a show one time. I stood him on the bench and I backed up against the wall. He stood there just like a poster, tail straight up, head straight forward, back level, feet never moved. And the judge looked at me and said, "You cocky, you know what? If you don't put your hands on that dog, I'm going to scratch you off the bench." First
No,
show, first
no,
showboat.
no wonder your dad loved that dog so much.
Yes. And Dad hated shows,
Mm-hmm.
but he would stand back and he would smile from ear to ear when
Mm-hmm.
Shorty was on that bench. Or we had 4 or 5 really good hounds that had that show ability and out of Shorty. And probably the last few pictures I've got of my dad over the last 4 or 5 years
Mm-hmm.
was with Popcorn, where I had won state championships on the bench. And normally Dad wouldn't even get in a show picture.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And because he was about to hunt and I was about both.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd call him on weekend and he'd say, "How'd you do?" "Oh, I won this big show. I had 40 dogs." "I don't care. How'd you do in the hunt?" As years went on when he wasn't able to go.
Mm-hmm.
All he cared about was the hunt.
Well,
But he would smile when he'd see his dogs win on the
mm-hmm.
bench. He wouldn't admit it, but I caught him.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today and just sharing your story and giving us some tips even for folks that maybe aren't as familiar with competition hunting on what to look for. And I cannot wait to have you back to cover some more topics. I really can't. But thank you again for spending some time with us.
Well,
And
thank you for giving me the opportunity. And like I said, I want to give all the praise and glory to my dad because he sure guided me in the right direction. And I probably wouldn't be in the sport if he didn't set these ground
mm-hmm.
rules for us to follow. And here it is 30 years later, from 94 to almost 2024, 40 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are still going by the same air rules, the Mountain Outlaw rules that he set forth, and I felt like that's kept great structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, thanks, Jeff, and I'm sure we'll be reaching back out to you for next time.
All right, man. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to part 2 of our 2-part interview with Jeff Stacy of Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Kennels. Remember to like us and subscribe if you want to be notified when new episodes are released. Also, you can email your comments and or suggestions for future content to buffintherough@gmail.com. I hope you join us next time to talk about once-in-a-lifetime hounds.